16 Vayu Purana Lumaharshana and the other sages King Adhisima Krishna, alternatively, Asima Krishna, ruled the earth well. During his reign, several sages organized a yajna, sacrifice, on the banks of the sacred river Drishadvati. The river flowed through the region that was known as Kurukshetra. The sacrifice went on for a very long time, and the sage Lumaharshana came to visit the sages who were conducting the ceremony. Lumaharshana was so named because his recitals thrilled, Harshana, the body hair, Loma, of his listeners. Lumaharshana was the disciple of the great sage Vedavyas and had learned the Puranas from his teacher. He was also well versed in the Vedas and in the stories of the Mahabharata. As soon as Lumaharshana arrived, the other sages greeted him warmly. Lumaharshana greeted them in return. The assembled sages told Lumaharshana, "Great Sutha, we are gratified that you have decided to grace our ceremony by your august presence. This is an auspicious occasion for telling us the stories of the Puranas. You have learned them from the great Vedavyas himself. Please recite the Puranas and slake our thirst for knowledge." Lumaharshana belonged to the Sutha class. A Sutha was the son of a Kshatriya, the second of the four classes. Mother, looking after horses and acting as charioteers were occupations that were prescribed for Sutas. In addition, they sought the glories of kings. The accounts of the Puranas state that Sutas were first born when the great king Prithu organized a yajna. They accordingly became raconteurs of the great deeds of Prithu, and thereafter, of all kings. They also recited the stories of the Puranas. "I am a Sutha," replied Lumaharshana. "It is therefore my duty to recite the Puranas. You have asked me to do that which is my duty. I shall gladly accede to your request." The ancestors, Pitri, had a daughter named Vasvi. She was cursed that she would be born as a fish. This fish had a daughter. The great Vedavyas was born as Satyavati's son. Vedavyas learned the Vedas from the great sage Jatakarna. He also composed the Mahabharata and the Puranas. "I have learned the Puranas from Vedavyas," continued Lumaharshana. There were several sages who lived in the forest known as Namishranya. They requested the wind god Vayu to tell them the answers to many questions. Vayu's replies constitute the Vayu Purana, and this is the text that I shall recite for your benefit. It is the most sacred of all the Puranas and is full of wisdom. What is this business of Vayu reciting the Purana to the sages of Namishranya? Asked the assembled sages. "We are not aware of it. Please tell us about it first." Lumaharshana complied. Namishranya forest is on the banks of the river Gomti. At a time when King Pururava used to rule the earth, many sages organized a yajna in Namishranya. The chief priest at this ceremony was Brihaspati, the preceptor of the gods, and the ceremony went on for 12 long years. When the ceremony was over, the wind god Vayu recited the Vayu Purana to the sages. In reciting the text, Lumaharshana began with the account of the creation. Creation. In the beginning, there was nothing in the universe. The Brahman, the divine essence, alone was everywhere. The Brahman had neither color nor scent, it could not be felt or touched. It had no origin, no beginning or no end. The Brahman was constant, and it was the origin of everything that was destined to be in the universe, and the universe was shrouded in darkness. When it was time for creation to begin, the Brahman divided itself into three. The first part became Brahma, the creator of the universe. The second part was Vishnu, the preserver of the universe. And the third part was Shiva, the destroyer. At the time of creation, water appeared in the universe and the water was everywhere. In the water was created a golden, Hiranya, egg, Anta, that floated like a gigantic bubble. Brahma was born inside the egg. Since Garbha means womb, Brahma came to be known as Hiranyagarbha. Since he effectively created, Bhu, himself, Swayam, he is also referred to as Swayambhu. Brahma had 4 faces. Also inside the egg were all the worlds, lokas, that would be created, in embryonic form. The earth was there, with its land, mountains, oceans and rivers. The moon, the sun, the stars and the planets were there. Also present were gods, demons, humans and other living beings who would be created. This was the original creation of the universe, saga. But at the end of one of Brahma's days, a minor destruction takes place. The universe is once again flooded with water during Brahma's night. Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva are not however destroyed. Each of Brahma's days is known as a kalpa, cycle. Thus, a minor destruction takes place at the end of every kalpa. When a new day dawns for Brahma, creation begins afresh. This periodical process of destruction, pralaya, and recreation is known as Pratisaga. The present kalpa is known as Vara kalpa. Why is the present kalpa known as the Vara kalpa? Asked the sages. Lumaharshana told them the story of Vishnu's boar, Vara, incarnation. Vara kalpa. At the end of the last kalpa, there was a destruction and the universe was flooded with water. Vishnu slept on the water as long as Brahma's night lasted. Since Nara means water and Enyana means resting place, Vishnu is accordingly known as Narayana. When Brahma's day dawned, he wished to embark on the process of creation. But where would the created beings live? There was no earth for them to live on. The earth had been submerged under the water. Vishnu therefore adopted the form of a huge boar, Vara. The boar's body was as large as a mountain and it had gigantic tusks that were exceedingly sharp. The eyes of the boar blazed like lightning and its roar thundered like the clouds. As a boar, Vishnu entered the water and began to search for the earth. He found the submerged earth and raised it up to its proper place on the tusks of the boar. The earth began to float on the water like a huge boat. Vishnu also leveled out parts of the earth. The mountains that had existed on earth in the earlier kalpa had been burned down by the fire that raged at the time of the destruction. Vishnu created new mountains. Because they did not move, Chala, the mountains came to be known as Achala. And since they had layers, Parva, or ranges, they came to be known as Parvata. The land masses were also created. The creation of living beings could now begin. And since the creation of this kalpa took place after Vishnu's boar incarnation, the cycle came to be called Vara kalpa. Brahma created water, fire, air, the sky, directions, heaven, oceans, rivers, mountains and trees. He also created time, night and days. Through his mental powers, he created 3 sons named Sanandana, Sanka, and Sanatana. In each kalpa, there are 14 manvantaras, eras. Each manvantara is ruled over by a Manu. The gods and the 7 great sages, Saptarshi, change from one manvantara to another. The title of Indra, king of the gods, also changes hands. In any one particular manvantara, there are 28 crores of gods. Therefore, in 14 manvantaras, there are 392 crores of gods. Yugas. There are roughly 71 Mahayugas in a manvantara. A Mahayuga lasts for 12,000 years of the gods and consists of 4 different eras or yugas: Satya Yuga or Krita Yuga, Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Satya Yuga lasts for 4,000 years of the gods: Treta Yuga, Dwapara Yuga, and Kali Yuga. Satya Yuga lasts for 4,000 years of the gods: Treta Yuga for 3,000, Dwapara Yuga for 2,000, and Kali Yuga for 1,000. This adds up to 10,000 years in a Mahayuga. Another 2,000 years are to be added for intervening periods, Sandhimasha, between 2 yugas. Hence the total of 12,000 years in a Mahayuga. In Satya Yuga, winter, summer and monsoon were unknown. All individuals were equally handsome, equally prosperous and equally happy. There was no concept of dharma, righteousness, or adharma, evil, since people were naturally righteous. There were no prescribed places where people lived, there were no cities or villages. People lived freely on the shores of the oceans and in the mountains. Roots, fruits or flowers did not grow. People lived on juice that came out of the bowels of the earth. This juice was so miraculous that old age and disease were unknown. Hatred and envy did not exist. There was nothing to be envious about, since all individuals were equal. Moreover, people had the mental power to summon up whatever object they desired. There were no shortages. As one moved from Satya Yuga to Treta Yuga, these mental powers that people possessed disappeared. The primary obsession of individuals in Satya Yuga was meditation. In Treta Yuga it became knowledge. Thick clouds appeared in the sky and it began to rain. This rain fostered the growth of various trees. People started to live on the fruits of these trees. The trees also provided barks for clothing and honey. These trees were so wonderful that they were known as kalpa-vrikshas. That is, they provided whatever it was that one desired. But as Treta Yuga progressed, people became evil and started to fight over the possession of these trees. Consequently, the trees began to wither away. It was then that habitations started to be built. Earlier there had been no fixed dwelling places for humans. Such habitations were built on mountain and near rivers. Villages and cities were constructed. It also became necessary to have units of measurement. The smallest unit of measurement was an anguli, a finger. 10 angulis made 1 pradesha. This signified the length from the thumb to the extended index finger. The distance from the thumb to the extended middle finger was tata, from the thumb to the extended ring gokarna, and from a thumb to the extended little finger vitesti. Thus, 12 angulis were equivalent to 1 vitesti. 21 angulis made 1 rakni and 24 angulis made 1 hasta, hand. 42 angulis were called 1 kishku. 4 hastas made 1 dhanu, bolinth. 2000 dhanus were 1 gavuti, and 4 gavutis constituted 1 yojna. Thus, 1 yojna was made up of 8,000 dhanus. The yojna was the basic unit for measuring the sizes of human habitations. The houses that men built were known as shalas. This is because they were modeled on trees. The branches of a tree, shaka, spread out in all directions. Since the houses spread out in this fashion, they were called shalas. The palaces were called prasada, the word signifying that these dwellings pleased the mind. The kalpa-vrikshas having disappeared, people had to look for means of sustenance. This they found in trees and herbs. In fact, the discovery of herbs goes back to Treta Yuga. But people became evil. They fought over the possessions of rivers, land, mountains, trees and herbs. Might became right and those who were strong managed to establish property rights. The weak suffered. The result of all this fighting was that the trees and the herbs disappeared and food grains grew no longer. The entire earth was swallowed up by thick forests. Suffering from hunger and thirst, people went to Brahma in search of a solution. Brahma milked the earth so that trees, herbs and food grains might grow afresh. To make sure that people did not fight again, Brahma laid down the precepts of righteous conduct. This was encapsulated in the principle of Varnashrama Dharma, the system of 4 Varnas, classes, and 4 Ashramas, stages of life. The principle of Varnashrama Dharma thus dates back to Treta Yuga and was enunciated by Brahma himself. People are divided into 4 Varnas. The first class is that of Brahmanas. The Brahmanas are those who are knowledgeable in the true nature of the Brahman. Their primary occupations are performing sacrifices, studying and receiving alms. The second class consists of Kshatriyas. Their primary duties are to bear arms so that they can protect the good and punish the evil. They must also rule and fight. The third class consists of Vaishyas. The primary duties of Vaishyas are agriculture, animal husbandry and trade. The fourth and final class is that of Shudras. The Shudras are to serve the other 3 classes and act as artisans. They are not permitted to study, perform sacrifices or donate alms. These are only permitted for the first 3 classes. A Brahmana who performs his duties well gets to live Brahma, such a Kshatriya gets to live with Indra, such a Vaishya with the gods, the Maruts, and such a Shudra with the Gandharvas, singers of heaven. Brahma also laid down the system of the 4 ashramas. The first one is Brahmacharya, celibate studenthood, the second Gahestya, householder stage, the third Vanaprastha, forest dwelling stage, and the fourth Sannyasa, hermithood. In Brahmacharya stage, one has to study and serve one's teacher, Guru, well. After this period is over, one is married and enters the householder stage. A householder has to perform sacrifices and serve his guests. Gahestya is superior to the other 3 ashramas, since it is on the alms provided by householders that individuals in the other 3 stages of life subsist. When the householder stage is over and one has had sons, one enters Vanaprastha. Such a person retires to the forest and lives on fruits and roots. It is only when the mind is completely detached from material pursuits that one moves on the final stage of sannyasa. Creation continued from his mental powers. Brahma created 10 sons. Their names were Bhrigu, Pulastya, Pulaha, Kratu, Angira, Marichi, Daksha, Atri, Vashishtha and Rudra. The first 9 became sages and were known as the original Brahmanas. To ensure that creation progressed, Brahma divided his own body into 2 halves. The male half was known as Swayambhuva Manu and the female half was known as Shatrupa. These 2 married and had 2 sons named Priyavarata and Uttanpada. They also had 2 daughters named Akuti and Prasuti. Prasuti married Daksha and they had 24 daughters. These 24 daughters became the mothers of all living beings. 13 of the daughters were married to Dharma. Of the remaining 11 daughters, Sati was married to Shiva, Rudra, Khyati to Bhrigu, Sambhuti to Marichi, Smriti to Angira, Preeti to Pulastya, Kshama to Pulaha, Sanneti to Kratu, Ansuya to Atri, Urja to Vashishtha, Swaha to Agni, and Swadha to Agni, Swadha to the ancestors, Pitris. Brahma told Shiva, "Why don't you create some beings?" Shiva agreed with alacrity. But all the beings whom Shiva created were just like him in form. That is, they were immortal. What are you doing? Exclaimed Brahma. Don't create beings who are immortal. Create those that are mortal. I will not create mortal beings, replied Shiva. Then stop creating. Responded Brahma. I will take care of creation myself. Shiva ceased to create. But the beings whom he had already created came to be known as the Rudras. They were given rights to offering made at sacrifices, together with the other gods. Yoga. Shiva taught the world the technique of yoga. Yoga literally means union and is a form of meditation that teaches about the union between the individual human soul, Atman, and the divine soul, Paramatman. It is this knowledge that is strived for by those who meditate. And one who does not appreciate this union suffers from illusions. Yoga has 5 components. These are pranayam, dhyana, pratyahara, dharana and smrana. Pranayam signifies control over the breath of life. A lion or an elephant is a wild animal. But if lions or elephants are caught and tamed, they can be made to serve man's purpose. Exactly similarly, when the breath of life is controlled and mastered, an individual can use it to serve his own will. Pranayam must always be practiced in a proper posture, asana. Pratyahara signifies the withdrawal of the senses from material attachments. The next step is dhyana. One chooses the image that one is contemplating and fixes it in one's mind. In the process, it is best to concentrate on the tip of one's nose or at the center of one's brows. When the image has been thus fixed, one can begin the actual process of meditation, dhyana. Yoga must, however, always be practiced in a proper place and at a proper time. It must not be practiced in the middle of the forest, near a fire, or at a place frequented by wild animals and insects. There must not be any noise to distract the practitioner. Nor must yoga be practiced when one is hungry or thirsty, or in an unhappy state of mind. If these injunctions are not adhered to, yoga can bring great harm. It can lead to illness, dumbness, deafness, blindness and old age before the appointed time. But practiced properly, yoga is a cure for various illnesses. When one is practicing yoga, there are various disturbances and distractions that impede the progress towards the desired goals. These are known as upasagas. For example, one might become overly attached to relations, to becoming wealthy or to attaining heaven. Noises are heard, although there are no real noises at all. Demons, gods and Gandharvas are seen. All of these are illusions and have to be conquered. When the upasagas are successfully conquered, a practitioner of yoga attains various powers. These are known as Aishwarya, wealth. There are 8 of these powers. The first is known as Anima. This enables the individual to obtain whatever object he desires from anywhere in the universe instantly. The second is known as Lagima. This enables one to travel through the sky. The third power is Prapti. By means of this, any object in the 3 worlds can be attained. The fourth power is called Prakamya. This gives the individual the power to obtain all the wealth of the universe. The fifth power is called Mahima. Through this power, one can be connected to any place or any object in the universe. The sixth power of Ishitwa gives one the capability to cause happiness or unhappiness anywhere in the 3 worlds. The seventh power is Vashitwa. This grants the power to control other living beings and all objects. The final power is known as Kambaseta. By means of this, the individual can travel freely at will. A person who attains these powers knows no birth, death, old age, illness, happiness or unhappiness. The senses mean nothing to him, nor do material objects. His mind is fixed only on the Brahman. Everything else is unreal. Dreams and omens help people to predict the future. A person who cannot see the pole star, Dhruva, or the Milky Way, Chalpata, will die within the space of a year. If the sun seems to be faded to you, you will not live for more than 11 months. A person who dreams of wanting gold or silver is not destined to live for more than 10 months. If one's footmarks on dust or mud are not complete, one will die within 7 months. If a vulture, a crow, or a dove alights on your head, that is a reason for sorrow. That means that you will die within 6 months. A person whose reflection is distorted, or a person who is suddenly surrounded by a cloud of dust, will live for 4 or 5 months at the most. If one sees lightning although there are no clouds in the sky, or if one sees a rainbow in the water, the indicated lifespan is merely of 2 or 3 months. If a person sees that his reflection has a severed head, he will live for only 1 month. A person who reeks of the smell of dead bodies has but a fortnight to live. If you find that your feet are dry after taking a bath, that is a reason for great sorrow. That means that you will die within a space of 10 days. The implications are the same if you find that smoke billows out of your head. A person whose thirst is never slaked will die very soon. Death is also imminent for a dreamer who dreams of traveling southwards in a chariot drawn by bears or monkeys. The connotation is the same if one dreams of traveling southwards, accompanied by singing women dressed in black. Death is nigh if one dreams that one is wearing black clothes with holes in them. 10 days of life is all that is left if one dreams of ashes, coal, hair or dried rivers. It is a bad omen if jackals follow one around at the stroke of dawn. Death will come soon, as it will if your teeth chatter after having a bath. When a lamp is extinguished, a burnt smell lingers in the air. If you cannot smell this, you will not live for long. Other bad omens which signal the end of life are the following: seeing a rainbow at night, failing to see one's own reflection in the pupil of another person's eye, continuous watering from one eye, a rough and blackened tongue, deafness, and blindness. There are several other bad omens. It is not the case that these bad dreams and bad omens cannot be countered. The best way to counteract their influence is to chant the mantra, incantation, Om. Kalpas there was a sage named Savarni. He told the wind gold Vayu, "We know that the present kalpa is called Vara kalpa. But how long is a kalpa? And what are the various other kalpas? Please tell us the answers to these questions." Vayu said the following: There are 4,320,000 years in a kalpa. Each kalpa is only one of Brahma's days, and 1,000 kalpas constitute 1 year for Brahma. 8,000 such years constitute Brahma's yuga, and 1,000 of these yugas are called a savana. 2,000 savanas constitute a trivrita, and this is the period of time for which Brahma lives. The kalpas since the original creation were as follows: 1. Bhav, 2. Bhuva, 3. Tapa, 4. Bhav, 5. Ramba, 6. Ritu, 7. Kratu, 8. Vani, 9. Havyavhana, 10. Savitra, 11. Bhuva, 12. Aushika, 13. Kushika, 14. Gandharv, 15. Rishabha, 16. Shadaj, 17. Majalia, 18. Madhyama, 19. Viraja, The great Viraja Manu was born in this kalpa and his son was the great sage Dadhichi. 20. Nishda. The race of Nishdas, hunters, were created during this period. 21. Panchama. 22. Meghvahana. The word Megha means cloud and Vahana means to bear. In this kalpa, Vishnu adopted the form of a cloud and bore Shiva on his back. It is thus that the kalpa received its name. 23. Chintaka. 24. Akuti. 25. Vijnati. 26. Mana. 27. Vav. 28. Vrihat. 29. Shvetalohita. 30. Rakta. 31. Pithavasa. 32. Sita. 33. Krishna. 34. Vishwarupa. The goddess Saraswati appeared in this kalpa. In each Dwapara Yuga, a Vedavyas is born. The Vayu Purana lists the names of the 28 Vedavyas who have been born so far. Brahma, Vishnu and Shiva. At the end of the last kalpa, there was a minor destruction and the world was flooded with water. Vishnu alone slept on this water, balanced on the hood of the great snake, Ananta. While Vishnu was thus sleeping, a lotus sprouted from his navel. It was a huge lotus and extended for 100 yojanas. And it shone with radiance. Vishnu began to play with the lotus. While Vishnu was thus playing, Brahma arrived. "Who are you and why are you sleeping on this water?" asked Brahma. "I am Vishnu and I am the Lord of everything," replied Vishnu. "But who are you and where are you going? How can you be the Lord of everything?" asked Brahma. "I am the Lord of everything that is in the universe. Everything that will be there in the universe is already there inside my stomach. If you don't believe me, why don't you enter my stomach and see for yourself?" Vishnu's curiosity was stirred and he entered Brahma's stomach. Inside the stomach he was greatly surprised to find all the worlds that would be there in the universe. The mountains and the oceans were all there. So were all the living beings who would be created. Vishnu spent 1000 years inside Brahma's stomach, marveling at these wonders. But he could find neither the end nor the beginning of Brahma's stomach. He finally made his exit through Brahma's mouth. Vishnu told Brahma, "I bow down before you, you are indeed the Lord of everything. There are many marvels that I saw inside your stomach, many are the worlds that are there. But I can also rival you. Why don't you enter my stomach? I too can show you many worlds there." Brahma entered Vishnu's stomach and saw many worlds there, as Vishnu had promised. Brahma spent several years inside the stomach, but could find neither its end nor its beginning. Meanwhile, Vishnu had closed all the exits from his body and Brahma could find no way of coming out. He finally made his body very small and came out through Vishnu's navel. He clambered up the stalk of the lotus and seated himself on the lotus. Since a lotus is called Padma and Yoni means birthplace, Brahma came to be known as Padmayoni. While all this was going on, Shiva arrived on the scene. He held a trident in his hand. Such was the speed of Shiva's arrival that huge tidal waves were created in the water. Strong winds started to blow. "What is all this? Why are you shaking the lotus so and creating tidal waves?" Brahma asked Vishnu. "Who speaks from my navel?" said Vishnu. "Don't you remember?" replied Brahma. "I am Brahma. You had entered my stomach and thereafter I had entered your stomach. But you had closed all the exits, so that I had no way of getting out. In fact, I ought to be downright angry with you for treating me thus. I had to emerge through your navel and am now seated on the lotus. I am sorry, said Vishnu. I had not meant to insult you. I had only wished to play with you for a while. Let us now be friends. And as a token of your friendship, please grant me the boon that you will henceforth be known as my son. I agree, replied Brahma. At first, I thought that you were shaking the lotus and creating these tidal waves in the water. But now I see that there is another creature who is advancing towards us. His visage is terrible. He has 10 arms and he holds a trident. Who is this demon? Vishnu told Brahma that this was none other than Shiva, the destroyer, and that the two of them should pray to Shiva. But Brahma flatly refused to do this. He would not acknowledge Shiva as a superior. Vishnu's persuasion, however, bore fruit, and both Brahma and Vishnu started to pray to Shiva. What can I do for you? Asked Shiva. What boon do you desire? I am sorry that I doubted you, replied Brahma. Please forgive me. And as a token of your pardon, please grant me the boon that you will be born as my son. Shiva gladly granted this boon. Madhu and Kaitpa. After Shiva had left, two brothers named Madhu and Kaitpa appeared. They were demons. One of the demons wished to eat honey, Madhu, as soon as he was born, and thus came to be known as Madhu. The other demon looked like an insect, Kitha, and thus came to be known as Kaitpa. Madhu and Kaitpa wrought havoc. They destroyed the petals of the lotus. Next, they tried to eat up Brahma himself. Vishnu had gone back to sleep again, and Brahma woke him up. Please rescue me from these demons, Brahma told Vishnu. Vishnu created two beings from his mouth. These were known as Vishnu and Jishnu, and Vishnu, the original one, instructed them to destroy the demons. The being Vishnu killed Kaitva and Jishnu killed Madhu. But it took 100 years for the demons to be killed. The fat, Meda, from the dead bodies of the demons formed the earth. That is the reason why the earth is known as Medini. Rudra, you will remember that Shiva had granted Brahma the boon that he would be born as Brahma's son. To ensure that this indeed happened, Brahma began to perform very difficult tapasya, meditation. But despite all this meditation, nothing happened. This failure greatly angered Brahma, and he started to cry. As soon as these teardrops fell on the ground, poisonous snakes were born from the tears. This saddened Brahma even more, since unclean creatures had been born as a result of his tapasya. Brahma was so miserable that he fell down unconscious and died. As soon as Brahma died, 11 beings emerged from Brahma's body. They started to cry as soon as they emerged. The word Rud means to cry, and these beings came to be known as the Rudras. The Rudras revived Brahma. Brahma realized that Shiva had been born as his son in the form of these 11 Rudras and was happy. Shiva had promised Brahman that he would be born as Brahma's son. To achieve this aim, Brahma started to meditate. While he was meditating, a son suddenly appeared on his lap and began to cry. Why are you crying? Asked Brahma. Because I do not have a name. Replied the boy. I will give you a name, said Brahma. Because you have cried, you will be known as Rudra. But the boy continued to cry, and it turned out that he wanted a second name. This went on for 7 times. Rudra was accordingly given the names Vav, Shiva, Pashupti, Isha, Bhima, Agra, and Mahadev. Where will I live? Asked Rudra. Brahma told him that in his 8 different forms, he would live in the sun, the earth, the water, the fire, the air, the sky, the bodies of Brahmanas, and the moon. The descendants of Bhrigu, the sage Bhrigu, married Kyati, Daksha's daughter. Bhrigu and Kyati had two sons named Dhata and Vidhata. These two were gods. Bhrigu and Kyati's daughter was Lakshmi, the goddess of wealth and prosperity. Lakshmi was married to Vishnu. The descendants of the sage Bhrigu were known as the Bhargavas. One of these was the great sage Markandeya. The Vayu Purana also enumerates the descendants of the other sages. Daksha's daughter, Sati, was married to Shiva. Daksha was thus Shiva's father-in-law. But, as a son-in-law, Shiva never showed Daksha adequate respect. Or so Daksha felt. For instance, Shiva never bowed down before Daksha. On one occasion, Daksha invited all his daughters to his house. The only one whom he did not invite was Sati, although Sati happened to be his eldest daughter. The reason behind Daksha's not inviting Sati was his hatred of Shiva. Sati, however, went to visit her father, although she had not been invited. And once she was there, Daksha ignored her and paid her no attention. "Father, why are you treating me thus?" asked Sati. "I am, after all, your eldest daughter." "That may be," replied Daksha. "But consider your husband. He is far inferior to my other sons-in-law. All the others are great sages and show me respect. But your husband is a worthless fellow and is a perpetual thorn in my side. That is the reason I do not treat you with respect." Sati was aghast at these words. "My husband and I have not sinned," she told her father. "Yet you have insulted us both. I owe this body to you, since you happen to be my father. But I no longer wish to possess a body that owes its origin to you. I shall therefore give up this body. When I am born again, I will be remarried to Shiva." Having said this, Sati started to perform yoga. Such was the power of her meditation that a fire emerged and burned her physical body into ashes. Shiva learned this tragic news and was furious. He came to Daksha's house and told Daksha, "For this sin, you will be born on earth. That is my curse on you. As for the sages who are your other sons-in-law, they too are cursed." "I don't care about your curses," replied Daksha. "I will continue to defy you when I am born on earth. And I will instruct the sages that they are not to give you a share of the offerings that are made to gods at sacrifices." Sati was reborn as Parvati, the daughter of Menka, alternatively Meena, and Himagna, the Himalayas. She was remarried to Shiva. Because of Shiva's curse, Daksha was born on earth. He was born as the son of Marisha and the 10 Prachetas. The Prachetas were brothers who became sages and subsequently married the same woman, Marisha. Daksha decided to organize an Ashwamedha Yajna, horse sacrifice. But due to his earlier enmity with Shiva, Daksha did not invite Shiva to this sacrifice. The sacrifice was being held in the foothills of the Himalayas, on the banks of the holy river Ganga. All the gods and the sages had been invited to the sacrifice and went to the ceremony. The only exception was Shiva and his companions. There was a sage named Dadhicha, alternatively Dadhichi. He protested to Daksha that a sacrifice should not be held in Shiva's absence. Such a sanctity. But Daksha would not listen to Dadhicha. The sage therefore stated that he would not take any further part in the yajna. Moreover, he assured Daksha that the sacrifice was doomed to be a failure. Shiva and Parvati were seated on Mount Kailas and they noticed all the Vimanas, space vehicles, traveling through the sky, the gods and their wives resplendently seated. "Where are all these gods going?" asked Parvati. "Daksha is performing a yajna and they are all going to attend the sacrifice," replied Shiva. "Why have you not gone?" demanded Parvati. It must be that you have not been invited. But how is that possible? How can there be a sacrifice without you having been invited? You are superior to all the other gods. Please do something to ensure that you do get your share of the offerings. Shiva thereupon created a demon from his mouth. The demon's name was Virbhadra. He had 1,000 heads, 1,000 arms and 1,000 feet. Numerous were the weapons that he held in his hands. His fiery visage blazed like the sun itself, and his form rose way up into the sky. Virbhadra bowed before Shiva and asked, "What are my orders?" "Go and destroy Daksha's yajna," was the reply. Virbhadra left for the sacrifice. He created several other demons who would aid him in the task of destruction. Parvati also created a goddess out of her own body to act as Virbhadra's companion. This goddess was named Bhadrakali. This army trooped to Daksha's house and proceeded to destroy everything there. The mountains shook and trembled with their roars. The gods and the sages who had come to attend the sacrifice did not know what could be done. They merely stood there and were thrashed. The offerings that had been piled up for the sacrifice were scattered here and there by Virbhadra and his companions. The scaffoldings that had been erected were smashed. Daksha tried to run away, but Virbhadra grabbed him and beheaded him with a slice of his sword. Brahma and the other gods started to pray to Virbhadra and his companions. "Who are you?" they asked. "Whoever you are, please be pacified. Please listen to our prayers and spare us." "Don't pray to me," replied Virbhadra. "I am merely an instrument of the great Shiva. If you must pray, pray to Shiva himself." The gods and the sages started to pray to Shiva. Pleased by their prayers, Shiva appeared and set things right. He restored the surroundings to what they used to be before Virbhadra's destruction began. Shiva also revived Daksha, and Daksha too started to pray to him. Shiva obtained his due respect. Geography. Swayambhuva Manu had two sons named Priyavrata and Uttanapta. Priyavrata had 100 sons. 10 of these were named Agnidra, Vapumshmana, Medha, Meltithi, Vibhu, Jyotishmana, Dyutimana, Havya, Savana and Serv. When Priyavrata decided to retire to the forest, he divided up his kingdom amongst 7 of his sons. Since Priyavrata had ruled over the entire earth, this is how the earth came to be divided into 7 regions, Dvipas. Agnidra inherited Jambudvip, Meltithi Plakshadvipa, Vapumshmana Shalmali Dvipa, Jyotishmana Kushadvipa, Dyutimana Kraunchadvipa, Havya Shakadvipa and Savana Pushkardvipa. Agnidra, the ruler of Jambudvipa, had 9 sons. Their names were Navi, Kimpurusha, Hari, Elavrita, Ramya, Harinmana, Kuru, Bhadrashva and Ketumala. When it became time for Agnidra to retire to the forest, he divided Jambudvipa amongst these 9 sons. Navi inherited the region that lies to the south of the Himalayas. This is the region that subsequently came to be known as Bhartavarsha. The word Varsha signifies region. Kimpurusha received Hemkutvarsha, Hari Nashavarsha, Ramya Neelavarsha, Harinmana Shvetavarsha, Bhadrashva Malyavanvarsha and Ketumala Gandhamdanvarsha. Ilvarita inherited the region around Mount Sumeru and Kuru the region to the north of Mount Shringavna. Navi had a son named Rishabha and Rishabha's son was Bharatha. It was after Bharatha that the region which Navi ruled over came to be known as Bhartavarsha. Mount Sumeru, alternatively Meru, is in Jambudvipa. This has a very high altitude and gold can be found in abundance there. The eastern slope of the peak is white and is associated with Brahmanas. The northern slope is red and is associated with Kshatriyas. The southern slope is yellow and is associated with Vaishyas. The western slope is grayish and is associated with Shudras. You will remember that Brahma appeared from a lotus flower. Meru was formed out of the stalk of this flower. It is impossible to describe Mount Sumeru. The various sages who have attempted to describe it do not agree in their descriptions. This is because each sage saw, and thus described, only one part of the peak. The sage Atri described it as possessing 100 angles. The sage Bhrigu maintained that it had 1,000 angles. The sage Savarni thought it was octagonal. The sage Bhagyuri's description suggests that it had the shape of a quadrilateral. The sage Vashayani maintained that it was as shapeless as the ocean. The sage Kroishtyuki described it as circular, and the sage Gagya said that it had the shape of a woman's braided hair. It is only the great Brahma who can describe Mount Sumeru adequately. But it is known that there are many beautiful valleys in the region surrounding the peak. These valleys have ponds with limpid water, and lotuses bloom in thousands in these ponds. There are also many places with bejeweled pillars and golden gates. There are landing strips where the vimanas, space vehicles, of the gods can descend. Apart from the places, there are several hermitages frequented by the sages. But most wondrous of all is Brahma's famous assembly hall, located atop Mount Sumeru. This assembly hall is known as Manovati. The Vayu Purana now describes the mountains, rivers, ponds and valleys belonging to the different Varshas. These we will gloss over and concentrate only on the description of Bhartavarsha. Bhartavarsha is bounded by the Himalayas to the north and by the ocean to the south. Bhartavarsha is divided into 9 regions, Dvipas. The names of these regions are Indradvipa, Kasirumna, Tamraparni, Gyabastimana, Nagdvipa, Soamya, Gandharv and Varuna. This adds up to 8. The 9th region is an island that is surrounded by the ocean on all sides. It is not very easy to travel from one region of Bhartavarsha to another. The transportation problems are enormous. The southern tip of Bhartavarsha is known as Kumrika, Cape Comorin or Kanyakumari. Beyond the boundaries of Bhartavarsha live the disbelievers, that is, those who disbelieve in the Vedas. To the east live the Kiratas and to the west live the Yavanas. Bhartavarsha proper is populated by Brahmanas, Kshatriyas, Vaishyas and Shudras. There are 7 major mountain ranges in Bhartavarsha. These are known as Mahendra, Malaya, Sahya, Shaktimana, Raiksha, Vindhya and Paripatra. There are several other minor ranges, amongst which are Mandara and Ravyaka. Rivers abound in the region, owing their sources to the mountains. The rivers Ganga, Sindhu, Indus, Saraswati, Shatadru, Satluj, Chandrabhaga, Chenab, Yamuna, Sarayu, Iravathi, Ravi, Vitasta, Vipasha, Bees, Devika, Kuhu, Gomti, Dutapapa, Vahudha, Drishadvati, Koishiki, Tritiya, Gandaki, Nishchira, Ikshu and Lohita, Brahmaputra, originate from the foothills of the Himalayas. The rivers Vedashruti, Vedavati, Vritradni, Panasha, Vandana, Saitaira, Mati, Para, Chamanvati, Chambal, Vidisha, Vetravati, Shipra and Avanti originate out of the Paripatra range. This identifies the Paripatra as the Arvali range. The rivers Shona, Narmada, Mandakini, Dasharna, Chitrakuta, Thamasa, Pipala, Shroni, Karetoya, Pishachika, Nilotaffa, Jambula, Valuvahini, Saitaja, Shuktimeti, Makrina and Tridiva originate from the Raiksha range. This range thus seems to be the mountains around Chota Nagpur. Tapi, Tapti, Payoshni, Ni Vindhya, Badra, Nishadha, Vemvan, Vatarni, Shitivo, Kumadvati, Toya, Mahagauri, Durga and Antashila are rivers that owe their source in the Vindhya range. From the Sahir range there originate the rivers Godavari, Bhimarti, Krishna, Veni, Vanjula, Tungabhadra, Suprayaga and Kaveri. The Sahir range thus corresponds to the Western Ghats. From the Malaya range originate the rivers Kritamala, Tamravani, Pushpajeti and Uppalavati. In the Mahendra range are found the sources of the rivers Trisma, Kratutulya, Ikshula, Tridiva, Langalini and Vamshadra. The rivers Rishika, Sukumari, Mandaga, Mandavahini, Kupa and Palashini originate in the Shaktimana range. Astronomy. The earth is made up of 5 elements, Bhuta. These are earth, wind, sky, water and energy. There are 7 regions in the underworld, Patala. These are known as Atala, Sutala, Vitla, Gabastala, Mahatala, Shritla and Patala. The ground in Atala is dark in color, in Sutala it is pale, Vitla has ground that is red, in Gabastala the ground becomes yellow, in Mahatka it is white. There are numerous stones and boulders in Shritla, but in Patala, the ground is laced with gold. Snakes and demons live in the underworld. Atala is ruled by the demon Namuchi, Sutala by the demon Mahajamba, Vitla by the demon Prahlad, Gabastala by the demon Kalanemi, Mahatala by the demon Virochna, Shritla by the demon Kesri, and Patala by the demon Vali. The great snake Vasuki lives in Shritla and the great snake Shesha lives in Patala. Vasuki is a king of the snakes, Nagas. He was the son of Daksha's daughter Kadru and the sage Kashyapa. Usually, Vasuki and Shesha are regarded as synonymous, the name Ananta also being used. The eyes of the snake Shesha are like red lotuses. His complexion is white and he wears blue. His 1,000 hoods glow with radiance. Just as there are 7 lokas which constitute the nether regions, there are 7 lokas which constitute the upper regions. The universe consists of 14 lokas. The 7 loka which form the upper regions are named Goloka, Bhuvaloka, Swaroka, Mahaloka, Janaloka, Tapaloka and Satyalok. The smallest unit of time is a nimesha, the time it takes of the eyes to blink. 15 nimshas constitute a kashta, 30 kashitas are a kala, 30 colors make a muhurta and there are 30 muhurtas in the space of 1 night and 1 day, ahoritra. The 30 muhurtas in a day are divided into 10 units, each unit consisting of 3 muhurtas. The unit that corresponds to the time of Sunrise is known as Pratha, dawn. The next unit is called Sangava, forenoon. Forenoon is followed by Madhyana, noon. Next come Aprahna, afternoon, and Sayana, evening. These 5 units made up of 15 muhurtas form the day. There is an equal number of muhurtas in the night. This should not be taken to mean that day and night are always equal. Sometimes the day is longer than the night and sometimes the night is longer than the day. Day and night are equal twice a year. These 2 occasions are the precise midpoints of early autumn, Sharath, and spring, Vasanta. 15 days make up 1 paksh, fortnight, and there are 2 pakshs in every masa, month. 2 masas form a ritu, season, and 3 ritus are called an ayana. There are therefore 2 ayanas in every varha, year. The months Magha, Falguna, Chaitra, Vashaka, Jyeshta and Ashta are referred to as Uttarayana. Correspondingly, the months Shravana, Bhadra, Ashvina, Kartika, Agrahayan and Posha are referred to as Dakshanyana. Swayambhuva Manu had two sons named Uttanpada and Priyavrata. Priyavrata's descendants have already been mentioned. Uttanpada had a son named Dhruva. Dhruva pleased Vishnu through his tapasya and obtained the boon that a place would be reserved for him in the sky. Dhruva became the pole star. This is in the constellation of Shishumara, Ursa Minoris or the Little Bear. The moon, the sun, the planets and the stars all revolve around Dhruva. The sun's chariot is made of gold and is drawn by 7 horses. These horses are named Gayatri, Trishtupa, Anushtupa, Jagti, Pankti, Vrihati and Ushnika. There are 12 Adityas. In each month, 2 Adityas, 2 sages, 2 Gandharvas, 2 Apsaras and 2 Rakshasa, demons, ride on the sun's chariot together with the sun. This is as follows. I, the months Chakra and Vashaka, the Adityas Dhata and Aryama, the sages Pulastya and Pulaha, the Gandharvas Tamburu and Narda, the Apsaras Kratunshkala and Punjikasthala, and the Rakshasas Heti and Praheti. 2. The months Jyashta and Ashta, the Adityas Mitra and Varuna, the sages Atri and Vashishta, the Gandharvas Haha and Huhu, the Apsaras Menka and Sahjanya, and the Rakshasas Purushaya and Vada. 3. The months Shravana and Bhadra, the Adityas Indra and Vivaswan, the sages Angira and Brigu, the Gandharvas Vishwavasu and Ugrasena, the Apsaras Prumlecha and Nimlocha, and the Rakshasa Vyagra and Shweta. 4. The months Ashwina and Kartika, the Adityas Pajanya and Pusha, the sages Bharadvaja and Gautama, the Gandharvas Vishwavasu and Sorbhi, the Apsaras Vishwachi and Bhiritachi, and the Rakshasas Apa and Vata. We, the months Agrahayana and Posha, the Adityas Amsha and Bhaga, the sages Kashyapa and Ritu, the Gandharvas Chitrasena and Arnayu, the Apsaras Urvashi and Viprachitti, and the Rakshasas Vidyut and Svirja. 6. The months Magha and Falguna, the Adityas Twashta and Jishnu, the sages Jamdagni and Vishwamitra, the Gandharvas Dhritarashtra and Suryavacha, the Apsaras Tilottama and Ramba, and the Rakshasas Brahmopeta and Yajnopeta. The moon's chariot is drawn by 10 horses. These horses are named Yayu, Trimana, Vrisha, Raji, Bala, Vasa, Turanya, Hamsa, Vyomi and Mriga. Buddha's mercy chariot is drawn by 8 horses, Shukras, Venus, by 10, Mandalas, Mars, by 8, and Brihaspati's, Jupiter, and Shanis, Saturn, also by 8. Shiva's blue throat. Many years ago, in Satya Yuga, the sage Vashishta met Kartikeya, the son of Shiva and Parvati. Having worshipped Kartikeya, the sage said, "Please tell me how Shiva's throat came to be blue." "I do know the answer, and I will satisfy your curiosity," replied Kartikeya. "I was once on Mount Kailas, sleeping on my mother's lap. I heard my mother, Parvati, asked my father how his throat came to blue. And I will relate to you Shiva's reply. The gods and the demons once got together and decided to churn the ocean, Samudra Manthana. The gods and the demons were desirous of obtaining the Amrita, a life-giving drink, that was expected to emerge as a result of the churning of the ocean. But when the churning began, some terrible poison came out, and the gods and the demons were despondent at the sight of this poison, since they thought that it would destroy them all. They therefore fled to Brahma for protection. "Why are you so despondent?" asked Brahma. "A terrible poison named Kalkuta has emerged as a result of the churning of the ocean," replied the gods and the demons. "It is threatening to destroy the entire universe. It has even turned the great Vishnu's complexion black. The only solution is to pray to Shiva, said Brahma. He alone can deliver us from the effects of this terrible poison. Brahma and the other gods started to pray to Shiva. Shiva was pleased at these prayers and appeared. He swallowed up the poison. But such was the strength of the poison that it made Shiva's throat blue. The word Nila means blue and Kanta means throat. Since Shiva became blue of throat, ever since that day, he has been known as Nilkantha. Vedavyas, the sages requested Lumahashana, please tell us how the sacred Vedas came to be divided. Lumahashana recounted the following story. When Dwapara Yuga arrived, Brahma noticed that people were becoming evil and were no longer paying sufficient attention to the Vedas. They were gradually deviating from the righteous path. Brahma decided that the Vedas needed to be divided so that their wisdom might be disseminated amongst people. Brahma accordingly instructed Krishna Dvapayana Vedavyas to divide the Vedas into 4 parts. Vedavyas had 5 disciples. These were Gemini, Sumantu, Vasihampayana, Pela and Lumahashana. The 4 parts into which the Vedas were divided were known as the Rig Veda, the Sama Veda, the Yajur Veda and the Atharva Veda. Pela was taught the Rig Veda, Gemini the Sama Veda, the Yajur Veda and Sumantu the Atharva Veda. As for me, continued Lumahashana, the great Vedavyas taught me the Puranas. Pela passed on what he had learned to the sages Indrapramti and Vashkali. They were Pela's disciples. Indrapramti's disciple was Markandeya. From Markandeya the knowledge passed successively to Satyashrava, Satyashita, Satyaratha and Satyashri. Satyashri had 3 disciples named Kshatriya, Rathitara and Bharadvaja. Kshatriya was so proud that his vanity led to his destruction at the time of King Janaka's horse sacrifice, said Lumahashana. We don't know the story, responded the sages. What is this horse sacrifice that you are talking about? Please tell us the story. This is the story that Lumahashana told. King Janaka organized an Ashwamedha Yajna, horse sacrifice. People came from far and near to attend the ceremony, and numerous were the sages who graced the occasion with their presences. King Janaka began to wonder if there was any way of finding out who was the best among all the assembled sages. He devised a plan. Janaka decided to donate 1,000 head of cattle, 1,000 gold pieces, many villages and several servants. He then told the sages, I have gathered all these rices as a tribute to knowledge. But I am unable to decide who amongst you is the most learned. Why don't decide for yourselves? Let the person who is the most superior among you claim all this wealth for himself. Hearing this, the sages started to fight and argue. Each wanted the wealth for himself. Therefore, each sage maintained that he was superior to all the others. Amongst the sages was the great sage Yajnavalkya, and Yajnavalkya told his disciple, Take all this wealth to my home. I am the most learned amongst the sages. I have studied the Vedas really well. I will debate with anyone who dares to challenge me and establish my supremacy. The other sages were naturally not at all pleased to hear these words, and they began to debate with Yajnavalkya. Even though all the sages combined against Yajnavalkya, they were no match for him, and Yajnavalkya easily defeated them. Yajnavalkya then addressed the sage Kshatriya. What about you, Kshatriya? He asked. Why have you kept quiet? I know that you are full of vanity about your learning. What about debating with me? It is you who are proud and vain, retorted Kshatriya. I will bring you down a peg or 2. I am certainly going to debate with you. The debate started. Kshatriya asked Yajnavalkya more than 1,000 questions, but Yajnavalkya provided the right answers to all of these questions. He then told Kshatriya, I will ask you a single question. If you cannot give me the right answer, I curse you that you will die. Kshatriya did not know the answer to the question that Yajnavalkya asked. He therefore died. But prior to these events having taken place, Kshatriya had composed 5 sacred texts known as Sanhitas. And he had taught these to his disciples Mugala, Goloka, Kali, Matsya and Shaishiraya. Lumaharshana continued with Yajnavalkya's story. Vedavyas taught the Yajnavalkya's story. Vedavyas taught the Yajur Veda to Vashampayana. Vashampayana composed 66 Sanhitas and taught them to his disciples. These disciples came to be known as the Charkas. Why did these disciples come to be known as the Charkas? The sages asked Lumaharshana. Lumaharshana recited the following story. There was an occasion when an important religious rite had to be performed. All the sages agreed to meet on Mount Sumeru so that they might decide on the modus operandi for observing this religious rite. It was also agreed that any sage who failed to attend the assembly on Mount Sumeru would be regarded as guilty of having committed a sin, and the sin would be equivalent in severity to the sin committed from killing a Brahmana. For various reasons, Vashampayana could not attend the assembly. For a sin that was equivalent to the sin committed in killing a Brahmana, Vashampayana had to perform severe penance. This involved the observance of a difficult religious rite, vrate. Vashampayana told all his disciples, please help me in the observance of this difficult vrata. Amongst Vashampayana's disciples was Yajnavalkya. Yajnavalkya said, why are you bothering all these disciples? My powers of tapasya are such that I alone can perform what is required. Vashampayana regarded this as unwarranted vanity on his disciples' part. He therefore told Yajnavalkya that he no longer wished to have Yajnavalkya as a disciple. Yajnavalkya should also return whatever it was that he had learned from Vashampayana. Yajnavalkya therefore vomited out his knowledge of the Yajur Veda. To reacquire the knowledge of the Vedas, Yajnavalkya started to meditate. He prayed to the sun god, Surya. From Surya, Yajnavalkya came to accurate knowledge of the Yajur Veda. Yajnavalkya taught this knowledge of the Yajur Veda, Shuka Yajur Veda. Yajnavalkya taught this knowledge to 15 of his disciples. These disciples were named Kamvan, Vadrayashali, Madhyandina, Shepei, Vidigdha, Apya, Udala, Tamrayana, Vatsya, Galava, Shaishiri, Atavi, Eni, Virani and Saprayanga. Why were Vashampayana's disciples known as the Charkas? The word acharana means act. Since Vashampayana had committed an act that was the equivalent of killing a Brahmana, his disciples came to be named Charkas. Lumaharshana also told the sages that he himself had taught the Puranas to 6 of his disciples. These disciples were Sumti, Akritvrana, Bharadvaja, Mitra, Savarni, and Susharma. If you enjoyed this audiobook, please like and subscribe to be notified of when new audiobooks are uploaded. Thank you for listening and learning. Shanti.